Good, because it's good to record, because I do give quite a bit of information sometimes that, when you're an oral knowledge sharer, you just go with the flow of what the feel is and what we can share. So, and because I do a lot of these, I don't always remember everything I've shared with each group. So today I've got a couple. I don't even like to use the word stories because they actually are messages in with science put um, into story form to be able to remember. Because when we know about indigenous cultivation of food, we're looking at thousands of years of knowledge, and to write everything down is was too cumbersome because, for one thing, that would be a heck of a book to carry, as well as we've been through more than one ice age here and more than one type of climate change, as well as people have moved many times north, south, east, west. So it would not be practical to put it into written form. And as we know now, we are going through another change. And even now, the ones who gather maple syrup needed to do it 2 weeks earlier than what they usually do. Even the moose in Sweden are starting a week earlier in their migration. So things do change. So we have to be aware of that. And how they were aware of that is by watching, observing, seeing what's happening. And that makes it a lot easier to then take care and to be prepared. Always be prepared. When you're prepared, it makes things a lot easier and less harmful, and also sometimes even more productive, because that means sometimes a longer season where you can sprout more so. And because I don't follow the Western method of growing, I follow more traditional methods. And the traditional methods for me, a lot has to do with our natural cycle. And part of our natural cycle is the moon. So this is a quick little story about the moon and how the seeds one time when after they first were being created, because before that there was just spores, and spores were easy. They could float anywhere. But when seeds were started to be created, the plants needed to find ways to get them going. And the little seeds were sitting there wondering, well, we know it's when it's daylight, but how come at nighttime the light that comes from that light source isn't always around? Some got scared. Some were like, oh, the light's going away, it's going away. Others are like, kind of like it that it's going away. It allows me to sleep a little bit longer. That light all the time is just a little bit much. And the other ones were so very scared. It's like, oh no, no, we need the light, we need the light. Others were, well, you know what? Just be calm. Creation will let us know. Because if it wasn't meant to happen, it wouldn't be happening. And the next time there was a full moon, the moon had listened to the seeds, said, don't worry, little ones. Yeah, everything's fine. Because you may not see my light, but I'm always here. I never go away. You are never without me. But there's different times that the sun shines upon me. And when that happens, it does change the water in the soil. And so some of you that are waiting to grow, you will wait for that water to come at the right time. And that will help you to be able to then start at the right time for you. So you root seeds right now, while I'm shining, that's a great time for them to be planted. Because as I start to fade, you're going to chase the water as the water goes down. And the root seeds were like, oh, that's right, that's great. I noticed that last time. Once you started to fade away, I was able to grow further. I was able to grow faster, and it was a lot easier. And those darn ants weren't taking me because Others were putting us in too early, and the ants came along and scooted us away. Sometimes that's good, but I'd rather be with my other friends. And so the root vegetables we seed in the full moon. The week after that, well, I said, well, who goes in the week after that? She goes, oh, that's time of rest. And I'm going, rest? What do you mean rest? We don't really rest. It goes, oh, yes, you do. That's when not many seeds are going to be starting up. That's when the humans are going to come and they are going to steward you and steer the plants that are already here. So how do you mean steer them? Well, that's when they pinch like the deer. They watch the deer, and as the deer come and they pinch the plants after the full moon, the plants will come back in a different way, a little bit slower. But if they want the plants to come back quicker, they'll pinch the plants before the full moon, before my light is nice and full. So that way the plants will have more light. So there's a science to this. Just got to hold on and wait. Don't worry, your time will come. So then that's when humans also, by pinching the plants, take in the first flower, you're going to get more flowers. You're going to get a stronger plant and more production from your plants. And I've done it and it works. And so the week after that, that's when the new moon is. And that's when very few see the moon. You say, oh, well, that's when the new ones, the ones that produce the seeds outside of a pod, like lettuces and corn, ones that produce their seeds not in a pod, because they're young ones. So you can call that the leafy time. So I remember it as new moon, new leaves, and that way the seeds then are at a time when the water's starting to come up. And then the week after that is what we call the bean week. And that's where you remember to put seeds in the ground that are seeds within a pot, because that's when they like that water is a little bit higher, right? And so that's before the water starts to go down. And so that gives them time, as well as gives you time to not worry about having to get everything in at once. Because even if you put them all in together at once, they're still going to wait until the right kind of water and temperature to be in the soil before they sprout. That's why you'll notice some things will take a lot longer. Well, it's not your fault. It's just that the seed is waiting for that right water level to come up. And that's why Indigenous people, even when they were doing treaties, and even with the Métis, that they wanted the embankment along the north side of rivers, because I knew that the water table affects the rivers as well as the creeks that are within 10 miles of that river. And Winnipeg, there's actually 18 creeks here in the city. Many have been covered over, but they're still there. You can't stop water. Water flows. Water will always flow. So an example is the corner of Edison and Henderson. There was a mill there at one time. And there's a little park that actually has some millstones from the Mennonites that had a water mill there for grinding wheat. And the road that goes to Osborne, from Portage to the river, it was once a creek. That's where there used to be a brewery, actually, at the end of before it was road. In 1913, they filled it in. So I know all the land in West Broadway does have a water table level. So that's why I'd never really have to water my garden. And by direct seeding my seeds, the seeds can find what's called the food, the mycelium in the soil. Whereas I've experimented, and I've done it many times, where we've gotten ones from the greenhouse and they can't make it. They've been so fed all the time that they didn't know how to go looking for their own food. Whereas by direct seeding, my seeds know when to start up and also where to find their food. So they go looking and they situate themselves in that mycelium. And now science has been able to go, yeah, they're right. And it's great that science is now catching on, that a lot of what we've been saying has been true. That it's not just about companion plantings, plants that like to live together, but also when to seed. So I follow that moon cycle planting, where I've done zucchini in the middle of July during bean week, and I still got zucchinis. Within a month, that plant looks the same as the one that was that I planted in May, right? And even in August, I'll do bush bean during bean week, and they come up, and I have beautiful, beautiful beans by October. September, I even do carrots, 'cause that's a root vegetable, and they're only 30, 40 days. You look at your seed package, it doesn't say 200, you know, but usually, most things is 60 days, you know, so if it's only 45 days, well, that's only a month and a half, you know, so you can get more than one crop. So allowing yourself to change into thinking that, you know, we can plant more than once. It's important because we can get more than one crop. Just be ready for the harvest, because my, oh my, when I started doing that, I was going, oh no, I got too much. And that's when I started to dehydrate things and be able to use that later on, because it was just such a bounty. Because most of our plants are cold crops, so they don't like the hot soil. The ones that do are the ones that are called the nightshade family, and that's peppers, uh, peppers, potatoes, tomatoes. Potatoes not as much, because they do like cold soil, but definitely peppers, tomatoes, and eggplant, and peppers. Those are from the nightshade family, and they like hot soil. So those ones are okay even in metal pots, because the metal will heat up that soil. Just make sure you keep moisture in there for them. But they like hot roots, whereas everything else, it likes it cool. So you can plant in the shade, many of these plants. And you know, when we think about on your seed package, it says full sun. Many people think, oh, that's from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. No, that means desert. So actually, full sun means 6 hours. So if you get 3 hours of light in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, that's considered full sun. So if you have something that's out there all day long, it's going to either need mulch and also watching for your water, the moisture. But many of our plants too are drought resistant, and that's why our native people grew them. Many bean plants, such as black turtle beans and your pintos, and well, majority of them really. I've had people call me up and say, "Oh, your squash is wilting. It's 3 o'clock. It's dying." And I said, "Call me after 6." I've never had anyone call me after 6, because that's what squash plants do. They put their energy back into their stems and roots, and so their leaves will droop in the middle of the day. But then come evening time, they pop right back up. They're fine, because they're kind of like us. They want to conserve their energy during that heat, right? So that water will go back into the root systems and the leaf material or the stems, and yeah, and that's how they keep themselves regulated, right? But if you go and you water them, well, because they have a center like this, when you water during the heat of the day and water ends up inside of there, it's going to act like a magnifying glass. And then that sun is going to burn that center. Now I've seen it happen, because I've had to chase off my greening coordinator in West Broadway, because I go out at 1 o'clock and he's watering things. And I'm like, don't water at that time. That's the worst time to water, because not only is the water going to evaporate quicker, but if it gets caught into that little center, it's going to act like a magnifying glass, and it's going to burn the center. And then your plant does die. So watering, if you do water early morning, so that way it can evaporate off. Some do late evening. You do have to be careful in the sense of not having too much water in the evening because you get dew, right? And the dew happens, so you don't want any mold. And I know a lot of people water from up top, but plants actually, what they call have stomas, which is actually on the bottom of their leaves. And that's where they drink moisture from. That's why when it's going to rain, I know, is the trees turn their leaves this way. As the trees when they turn their leaves, the water comes down and they drink this way. So when you water your plants and the water is either bouncing up, it's going to knock that dirt onto where they're feeding from, and they can get mold there, right? So if you have mulch, though, it tends not to do that as much. Excuse me. So knowing when to water, that's why I always, with my green team and such, they go, well, should we water? And I said, well, go test. And well, how do you do that? Well, I put my finger into my second digit. And if it's moist down here, I don't water. They said, well, it's dry out top. And I said, yeah, but the roots aren't at the top. The roots are down below. So if I water again when it's dry up here, but it's still moist down here, you're going to get root rot. And it's going to rot the root instead of helping it. So let them dry out. Just like even your house plants. So many people kill their plants because they water them too much. You got to allow them to dry out in between. That's what makes them stronger. That's what makes them want to produce more flowers because they want to produce more seed. So following that has helped me a lot because there's been a lot of times why the kids want to water. And I think they just want to play in it, to tell you the truth. But I get them to test. I said, do the finger test. And then they test and they go, no, it's still nice and moist down there. Okay. Well, then test tomorrow. And you have to remember at nighttime, we do get dew on the land, unless it's going to rain. If it's going to rain the next day, there won't be dew on the land. So they said, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, you got to get up early. Me, I'm up early. I'm up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I can tell if there's dew on the land. If you don't get up till 10 o'clock, well, it's already evaporated. So doing the finger test is important. I got, and so by following that moon cycle planting, even the agricultural test site in Morden, they tested that theory of the moon cycle. And they were like, you know what, they're right again. Darn it. They're right again because it does affect, the moon does affect our water cycle in the soil, just like it does in the oceans. So it's important for me to follow that because it makes my growing and gardening so much more easier because we're busy. We got kids, grandkids, you got work, you got school, you got all kinds of things. Do I really have the time to do the Western method? I just don't. But by following nature and allowing nature to grow in its natural way, it's so much easier and a lot more enjoyable and productive. Because I can go away for a couple of weeks, not worry about my plants, not worry about my garden. I come back and it's doing great. I've done it even a young man with Food Matters. I gave him some seeds in July and they went up north and put in a bush garden. And they said, we did what you said, and we put all the different soil pieces together, sand and loam and some leaves and mounds, and we had some plants from a greenhouse that were given to us, a whole bunch that were sent up by plane, and we had your seeds. And we put them all in, one on one side, one on the other. Then they went hunting because they had to go hunting. They had 3 weeks to get some stuff done. And when they came back, the only plants that were alive were the seeds that they put in that were mine. All the ones from the greenhouse, there was no one there to baby them. They didn't know how to look for their water. And so they all died. So he put more seeds in. because he was like, Audrey said we can do it again in August, so no problem. So they did it again in August. And also, not clearing everything in the fall, because many plants will live more than once. Some call them perennials. Some perennials are 4 or 5 years, some 7. I had a Swiss chard grow for 5 years. By the end of the 5 years, the stalk of it was this big around, and it looked like a banana tree. And it had seeds all along the edges of the leaf, and it was huge. People thought it was an actual tree, and I said, no, that's Swiss chard. I just covered it over for winter, insulated it nicely, and every year it came back, and it was bigger and stronger. I've had spinach go 3 years. I've had kale, and I don't really like kale, but after it gets the frost and it goes to a second year, it's a lot nicer to eat. It's not so bitter. It's a little sweeter. Then I can handle that. But first year, it's like, oh no, a little bitter. Same as cabbage. In the fall time, a lot of people pull it out in September. I learned from a Baba. She goes, no, you just cut the head off. Leave the root in the ground. She said it'll resprout a bunch of babies. And that's what we like, is nice fresh ones. Fresh ones, yeah. Because it'll resprout. Kind of like, anyone ever see when you cut a tree down and how it sends up suckers all around the edge? Well, the cabbage will do the same thing. And it'll have a whole bunch of these baby cabbages. And so in November, I've had it where the snow is falling and them cabbages are just fine. And in fact, now they don't even harvest Brussels sprouts until the snow comes, because that's what makes them sweeter. They're not so bitter, as that cold sweetens them up. And so I've done that with cabbages, and I've had young ones that gave it a try, and they were like, oh my God, look at all these young baby cabbages. Because a cabbage, even though a lot of people like the big heads, it's the green part that's actually more nutritious than the white part that's on the inside. Right? So my Babas wanted the green more so for their sauerkraut. So they would use the first part, the big heads. They would pickle those to make their holupchi or cabbage rolls. When they would pickle those, and then the second crop is what they would use for the sauerkraut or winter sauerkraut, because it's more nutritious and it's younger, easier to gather, easier to chop up than the big heads. So I mean, it works. Because I've had people say, "What are you doing? It's November. What are you doing in the garden? You got a pitchfork." And in West Broadway, well, it doesn't hurt to walk around with pitchfork. People don't know if you know how to use it or if you know how to use it. So I never have problems with people, young ones or others, when you're carrying a pitchfork in winter. But it makes it easy to do, right? So even parsnips. A lot of people don't like parsnips because they're bitter. And I said, well, yeah, you're digging them up in fall time. Leave them in the ground. Dig them up in the spring. That's when they're sweet. They'll sweeten up, and that's when they're about to flower, right? But you catch them before that. You dig them up during winter. If you got them nicely insulated with the leaf material, I can go in the middle of winter and dig up carrots and parsnips and beets, but they're a lot sweeter. They're a lot more condensed in their sugars, because all the energy from their leaf material has now gone back into the root, right? So then my parsnips, and actually parsnips are supposed to be what they call biannuals, where the next year they produce seed, a flower. I've kind of tricked them one year because I had to move some. And I was like, oh, they're just coming up. And some people wanted to make use of the land that was there. So I lifted them, transplanted them, and wouldn't you know it, they went to flower. I was like, uh-huh. So I can trick you guys into making seed by just transplanting them. So, to me, it was like mad scientist in the garden. It's like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Like beets, From the market, I got some beets that were really nice. I like the yellow beets, and they had already been harvested, right? So I thought, well, let's put one back in the ground, see what happens next year. Well, next year, what the plant that came up did not look like a beet. It looked totally different. And it was like a bush. It was 2 feet high, at least 3 feet wide. And it got all these little yellow flowers, and it changed into a bush. It was no longer looks like a beet, because your beet leaves are actual leaves, but this looked like a little bush. And it had little yellow flowers, and all the little tiny yellow bees and other bees and pollinators would come to it at night. And 7 o'clock at night, oh my goodness, the wonderful scent that came from that flower of the beets. I was like, oh my goodness, if someone could bottle this, whew, that'd be something. Because you could just smell it in the scent in the wind. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's, but if we don't try it, we don't know. So knowing that you can get your beets to produce your own seed that you can then gather that year, you never have to buy seed. I haven't bought seed in 40, 50 years, unless it's something new I want to try out. But rarely that is, because a lot of times I go to seed swaps, and then that's where I find things that I haven't grown, like lemon cucumbers. Anyone ever try those? They're a cucumber, but they're round, like lemons. They're not those big long ones, because big long ones, I'm sorry, that's too much for me. I'm a single person. I don't have a big family to feed. But those little yellow ones, oh my goodness, they are so good, juicy, and filling, but they're nice because they're not overly big. And I've had ones come to the garden and they try one out, and a juice just squirts out of their mouth, and they're like, "Oh my God, I've never had anything this wonderful before," And I was like, "No, creation always gives you variations, changes, you know. So enjoy those changes. Try something different. If you don't want anyone stealing your tomatoes, plant yellow ones. No one, everyone's waiting for them to turn red. Meanwhile, you can harvest them, right? Or I do purple beans. No one will take my purple beans because they don't know what they are. But as soon as you take those purple beans, put them in hot water, they turn green, which is fun for kids because then they see that chemical action and they're like, oh, wow, I can make purple turn green. And they just love it. They think it's so cool. So and no one ever takes them. We had raspberries at Spirit Park, and we had the white raspberry and the yellow raspberry and the dark purple, and no one would take them. They would only go for the red ones. So I was like, wow, it's kind of good in one way, but I had to train people, say, try it out, try it. It's got a different flavor somewhat, but it's still a raspberry. But learning that everything comes in different colors, so it's not all, potatoes aren't all white or red. I've got purple potatoes. And when I dehydrate them and I make my own, well, mashed potatoes, basically, but instant, it's fun because I can have my purple potatoes in the middle of winter, right? I even made dumplings with them one time, just adding them into some of my maseca flour. And people are like, purple dumplings? Not used to that. And I said, well, you don't have to be. Those are my dumplings. I like some color in my food. I mean, all white all the time or all brown, because in wintertime it's usually everything brown. I add some little spice and color to it. Get some purple carrots. They are awesome. They are so sweet. They're beautiful as well. And when you share with kids that there's so many varieties of carrots and potatoes and tomatoes and all that, it adds variety to life as well as to your garden, right? I get tired of the same old, same old. I don't know if you do, but I do. I get tired of the same stuff, right? And another thing that the people learned too, because they moved around to a point, and after colonization happened, a lot of people had to move of no choice. But when they moved to a new area, they knew if that area was being stewarded. And I learned this from my Auntie Katie in Fort McMurray, because she took me out to the bush on her track line way back in 1984. We were going along. It was winter time, February, after the Queen of the North contest, which she won pretty well every time because the woman lived in the bush. She knew how to do all that stuff. She goes, sometimes I'd let someone else win just because, it's a nice thing to do. But, that was Katie Sanderson, very, very prominent woman in Fort McMurray. But anyway, as we were going to pick some muskeg tea. Others know it as Labrador tea, but it grows in muskeg. It likes that. And it's actually from the azalea family. Now, there's many kinds of azaleas around the world, right? But ours, we have two types here. We have what is called the muskeg or Labrador tea, and then the other one is mountain laurel. They both look the same, but one will kill you. There's always a mimic. The Labrador tea underneath, she showed me, it was a rusty color, almost reddish. She goes, that's healthy. That's like for your blood. You say if it has white, don't use it. That means death. So be careful because they can grow together. So always be careful and look at your plant. And so we were going along, and I was like, oh, there's a whole bunch over here that looks like it's been picked. She goes, oh, no, don't touch those ones. Oh, well, how come? She goes, oh, those belong to the old man over there, old Sam. Yes, well, how do you know? How can you tell? She said, because he's got the bear cut. I said, bear cut? What's that? He said, well, just like Saskatoons. He said, our Saskatoons and other berry plants, if we allow them just to grow tall, the bear will come and he'll pull them down, and a lot of times we'll break them. So we give a bear cut. It's the bear brush cut. So with my Saskatoons in Spirit Park, I cut after a couple of years of growth, once it got to be a couple feet high, I cut them, take off the leaders. And that way it stays a bush. And when it stays a bush, it produces a lot more berries, bigger berries, because it doesn't have to go up the main root or a main stem. It couldn't go up the many stems. Also, the squirrels can't get to them. I've watched the squirrel tries to get on that bush, and it's so light that the squirrel just falls right off. But the ones that we let grow, well, that squirrel can get to them all the time. And also, it's a lot higher. No one can reach them. So when we prune, which is what we do now, so this Sunday, I'll be going out to the park at 200 Yonge Street, and I'll be trimming the gooseberries, because you need to steer your plants. You need to give them a brush cut, as we call a bear brush cut. And so I will trim the plants so that way airflow can come through. Otherwise, heat and humidity can bring disease. Also, wind blowing and rubbing against your branches will cause breakage of the bark, which then disease can get in, and fungal issues happen. And you will get a bigger, better berry, just like apples. You got to trim them. If you just let it grow, well, it gets 10, 20 on a branch, and all of a sudden that branch snaps, right? So my son-in-law, he did that with the apple tree they had, and the kids were like, oh, Coco, he's killing that. He took all the branches off. And I said, no, he's giving it a brush cut. And so the next season, in the springtime, they noticed that all of a sudden, all these new branches came up, and they had bigger apples and better apples, because there wasn't a whole bunch of them that were small and puny and breaking the branches. They had quality apples. And that's what you want for your berries. You want quality berries. It's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? So you want quality ones. And that's why at this time, while they're still dormant, while the things are still asleep, that's when you trim everybody. Why? Because there's not so much hair to try and get through. Because once they put out their leaves, you can't tell which branches are rubbing and which ones. It's a lot more confusing. So without all the leaves, it's easier to see, as well as the sap isn't running as much to where they can bleed out if you cut them when they have the leaves. They can bleed out and insects and fungal stuff can get in. So that's when there's a lot more rain and such. Rain bounces off fungal issues off the ground. So now's the time. This is the time I go out and prune my grapes. Grapes, you need to prune them right back to the main stem because they only fruit on the new wood. They don't from the old. So if you don't trim your grapes, you'll eventually end up as grapes get smaller and smaller till eventually it goes, well, no one's taking care of me. I don't have to put out any grapes at all. And they don't. But when you want to bring them back to producing, only take off a third every year, and then you'll get back to where you'll get that main stem. And then, because if you look at any pictures of vineyards, they're not big and bushy. They got one stalk, and then they have those few that are the fresh vines, but those grapes are big and they're juicy. Because all that energy can go to making that berry instead of making a bunch of leaves and a bunch of vines. I know people think it looks nice, but do I want looks or do I want something to cook? Right? I want some grapes. I don't want just a bunch of leaves. Not to say the leaves are bad. They're edible. You know, in Greece they make what they call dolmas, which is to me it's kind of like holopshi or cabbage rolls, but they use grape leaves instead. So last year when we were trimming our grapes at Spirit Park, a lady came by. She was from Palestine. She's like, "Oh, you guys throwing those out?" And I said, "Not if you want them." Well, they fed 9 families. 9 families ended up with a bunch of the grape leaves, which they use to make their dolmas, but also you can use it when you're making your pickles as well as your sauerkraut, because the grape leaves have what's called tannin in them, and that's what helps with pickling. So you need tannin in order to stop any kind of fungal issues. So the grapes are great for many things. And when I trim them and people, once they take all the leaves off, well, you're left with a bunch of strings. Well, why go to Michael's to get one of them grape wreaths? Just make your own. So we would just wind them up and then make our own wreaths from them. And I used to usually give them away to people or put them up in the trees and have others decorate them and take them and make use of them. Because it's always something to make use of, right? So when you're able to follow that type of natural cycle, you get a lot more produce. Your plants are a lot happier because with that bear cut, your bushes are going to produce a lot more and little ones can reach them berries now, right? Same with the bear. So bears find it a little easier to find them and he's not going to bring down the branches and snap them. And my auntie always said, put extra out for them. So that way they'll go to that one. They won't necessarily come to yours. Always plant extra. Never just plant for yourself. So even at Spirit Park, we plant extra. We have 10 plots that we plant for community. And everyone seems to like the different type of zucchinis we plant and the different colored bush beans. And then we have, the kids actually wanted asparagus from Art City. So we put in a plot that's just asparagus. And then we have a plot of strawberries and another one with has lovage and herbs. And that fills those 10 front plots that we allow and actually try and get people from the community to come and pick from, right? Because giving back to community is important. Because our people were never about hoarding for ourselves. That's why the community of Selkirk, when they first got here, they actually didn't get here in time to plant seed. And so the grandmothers of Peguis noticed that the women and children were suffering because they didn't have enough food with them. And so they asked the chief Peguas to take to the Selkirk settlement people, take to them dried berries, dried meat, dried fish, dried vegetable flour, and show them how to use it, which they did. And they supported them the first 2 winters here in Manitoba, where they were able to survive, which we need to give thanks for, right? So knowing how to make use of that zucchini flour to make great bread, and to how to make the jerky and dried meats and the pemmican, and be able to help another, which was important. It wasn't about uh, any kind of superiority or anything. It's like, no, you don't let women and children suffer. You feed them. And so they did, because they knew they had more than enough in granaries that they had in the ground. Some of the granaries were big enough you could stand in. Off the bridge of Lockport, there's an archaeological site where they found granaries that were in the ground and proof of it. And so I've got soil that was given to me from the archaeologist when I visited that site. And it's from 1200 years ago. And to me, when I spritz it with my clean water, it smells like cinnamon. It's such a wonderful scent. Because when they would line the granaries, they would line it with sedge grass. The sedge grass is like a triangle, and they would put the triangles to triangle and line the pits with the sedge grass, and then pin it in place with willow stakes. And the willow, actually, the willow bark is like aspirin. That's where aspirin originates from. Is actually from the inner bark of the willow, because it's a preservative, right? It helps you with pain. You can, and this is a time to be gathering willow, not just for a medicine, but if you want rooting hormone for your plants, you get that willow. Scrape the bark and the green stuff underneath. You take that, you put it into your water barrel, and that's what you give your plants for their first drink, and that helps their roots. And so a lot of times they say when you get cut flowers from the florist, give a little bit of aspirin. Same thing, except it's not costing me anything. I just go down to the river and I gather some willow bark and shave it, put it in a container, or in the big water barrel. I always mark my barrels because I tell people don't just drink from my barrels. There's all kinds of things in there. You'll get medicine of a different kind, and it may not be too tasty. Right? So knowing that these plants can help other plants, just like us, we can help each other. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you today, that you can then take this knowledge and share with others so we can all help each other. Because right now we are in very trying times that we were told it was going to happen again. As it's just par for the course of being humans, that there's always going to be trials and testing of our inner strength, but also helping each other. This is time we come together, right? So you may not grow everything yourself, but as a community, hey, if you grow some carrots and this other one grows some cucumbers and the other one grows the cabbage, and then at the end of the season, you all share, oh, bounty for all. When I was a kid, I remember that in the Ukrainian foster homes I was in, they would do that. The backyards were grass. They were full of gardens, right? But everyone knew you couldn't grow it all yourself. There's not enough land. But each backyard had its own crop, and every year they'd rotate it. But every year they would come together in the fall and they'd all share. And as kids, we'd be cramming them cucumbers into the jars for dill pickles, and and harvesting in the snow when we'd go and gather the cabbages, the young cabbage. So if we can get back to that, because I seen what happened when they stopped doing that, is when Safeway came in and it was no longer co-op. And all their kids grew up and left home and they didn't have it to make as much. much pierogies and holopshi and such. And it kind of pulled everyone apart where they weren't doing it anymore. Everyone converted their backyards to grass. And now everyone's putting their backyards back to gardens, which is great. I love it. When I was a homeless youth, when I was in my teens, that's what kept me out of trouble, because I'd be knocking on doors with backyard gardens, and the babas would come out. Oh, you want to do weeding for me? Yeah. Then for lunch, oh, they'd bring me out lunch and everything. So, and I'd earn myself a few dollars and kept me out of trouble, kept me fed. But it's something that we need to get back again, which we are. We are. We've petitioned the city of Winnipeg years ago to have a community garden policy. They also have made more land accessible to having gardens, and as well as supplies. Just like back in the day when they had victory gardens after the war and during the war, they're now promoting more of that. And that's what we need, right? So I hope you gain tonight a little more insight to some things that could help you with your gardens and your bushes and berries. Because the first ones that flower are your berry bushes. So when the springtime comes and I go for a drive, I can spot what the Saskatoons are, because that's they're the white flower. And then later on I know where to hit if others aren't picking. But all trees actually flower first before they put leaves out, right? So when you're going for a drive and you see some white flowers, yeah, though that's a berry, or plums, or apples, you know. So anyway, I'll keep talking. So I think you might have some questions.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
I know I filled your heads with so much info, it's probably hard to think of what to ask. But if you ever want to come out to Spirit Park at 200 Yonge Street in Winnipeg, it's in West Broadway. Don't Google it; it'll send you somewhere else. So, but I'll be there every Sunday from 1 o'clock, at least for the rest of April and May and possibly June. And then by my helpers, we'll go by what everyone, if they want to change the time to earlier or an evening or something. But that's where I do my knowledge sharing. And I always repeat myself anyway. So it's never going to be just one thing or one time. I'll repeat, and you can just come out there anytime. And all the plants there are native plants, medicines and such. So that way you can take a look on how we grow it there, and then take that knowledge home and try it out in your own space, right? Don't have me come out to your place. I don't know where the sun's coming. I don't know where the wind's blowing, right?
I have one question, Audrey, because you were talking about pruning like your fruit trees, like your apple trees, and it's good to do it around now.
Yeah.
And I actually have two spontaneous apple trees in my yard, like crab apples in the last 3 years. So they're very young. And I want to help them. Like, is that too young to start pruning or no?
No, no, it's best to prune them when they're young,
Okay.
because by taking off that leader, they're going to branch and
Okay.
they're going to stay shorter. You're going to be able to reach them.
Yeah, that's
They're
one
not going to
thing.
be 30 feet high where you can't get a net over them and you can't reach them fruit. And then you're cursing afterwards as all this fruit's dropping that's rotten, you know, and but then you can reach them. And I know when I first did with the Saskatoons, everyone was like, oh, that's terrible. You took the leader out. I said, yeah, well, sometimes you got to take out that leader, know what I mean? Because you want your plant to bush. You want your tree to bush more, produce more branching. If it's a small berry like Saskatoon, to where it's going to be uh, easier to harvest, right? Whereas if it's too tall and all that energy is going to a trunk, you're not going to get as much, right? And then it's easier for Mr. Squirrel there to come and get a good snack. Whereas they never hit the bush one, the one that we did the bush cut with, because they can't stand on it because it flops over, right? Or the one that we didn't cut on purpose, well, they can zoom up and down that thing and hop all over and say, Audrey, you didn't
Someone
get
just said,
this one.
what about raspberries? I know they get pretty out of control for a lot of us.
Yeah, so they always need a trim. I always trim them back. They do better when you trim them, and they come back as better bush. But they love bone meal or blood meal because they're a woman's medicine. And so traditionally, when they was slaughter animals and such, the blood would be gathered and then put on the raspberry. But it's a little hard to get nowadays in animal blood. So I use comfrey. And comfrey is a plant that is a great one. It's got a lot of potassium and such. And so and you can cut that thing down 3-4 times a year. And I make a tea from it. Just don't keep it in your house. I did that one time and I could smell farts. I was like, I'm not farting. What's that smell? It was the pale burping from the gas from the comfrey. So make sure you keep it outside and label it, because we did that one time and but we didn't label it, and it actually, because it was for wine, because it could off gas with the little vent, someone stole it. I'm like, oh boy, if they open it up, there's not gonna be wine in there. So we had a good laugh on that one. But comfrey is a great one for that. It's one of my antis, so it's an anti-inflammatory as well. So I use that to make a salve for my bones and my muscles when I get sore and such. And I make my comfrey salve with it. It's also known as knit bone in the old country because it's so strong it can knit broken bone. So it's a really good healthy plant for scrapes and bumps and bruises. And one time I fell when riding a bike because a car cut me off, and my whole side of my face was road rash. And I used the comfrey leaf and tea and put it on. My doctor's like, "What did you use? You only got one little mark." And I told her, I used the comfrey, and it helped heal it twice as fast and didn't leave as much of a scar. So it's a good thing. Great for bone spurs, and don't tell that to Mr. Rump. I don't think he had them bone spurs anyway. But it's there again. It's something that helps give the potassium and phosphorus that your plants need. Because raspberries will tell you, they'll get kind of like veins in their leaves. They'll fade in color, but just stay veiny. And that's because they're lacking in that potassium and phosphorus. But as soon as you give that comfrey juice to them or blood meal, they will perk right up and turn right dark green, and they'll be happy, right? One year, when I first took over one garden, there was like 3 stalks of raspberry, and I had been with a trapper talking and stuff, and he brought me some beaver, and then I had about 5 beaver heads. So I took them and I shoved them in the ground around the raspberries. Well, holy smokes, by the second year, I had enough to plant a whole row. They just sucked that right up. So bone meal, I save my bones from when I cook after I make my bone broth, and I take that bones and I put it right back in the ground. And even when I open up my packages of meat, there's that little bit of blood. I've got a cup in the freezer, and I just drain it into there, and then thaw it out in the spring and put it on the plants that need it, because they'll let me know by their leaf. The leaf gets all veiny. That's because they need that, right? That's in a way on how they talk to us, by how they're acting. So when a plant's changing its color, um, it means it needs certain chemicals in the soil, which other plants can give it. So banana peels, save those banana peels. My goodness, that's lots of potassium in that. Helps your roses, keeps the black rot from roses and that. It's wonderful to have plants that can help other plants, right? So I know it's a lot of information, but now the internet, I can say Google it because Morden tested all these things and they found out, yeah, they were right. These things actually do work. You know, eggshells, that's calcium. And what loves calcium? Tomatoes. Tomatoes love calcium. That's why they say if you don't have eggshells, use one of them Tums because it's calcium, right? So if you don't have you forgot to save the eggshells and powder them, well, use some Tums. Put it at the bottom of the hole before you plant it. And when you plant tomatoes, if you get from a place, don't plant it upright. Lay it down. Make a trench. And we did that with one plant, and we ended up with a 5x3 huge tomato bush. It wasn't just a plant, because everywhere along the nodes that you planted, it's going to send up a whole new plant, right? So plant your. Sometimes it's okay to be a little sideways, right? Just let them fall over. Put them in a trench. You'll get a lot more bush from it, a lot more fruiting from it, and then you're not having to pay for 5 plants. You get 5 in one. I like that. And we've done it. We've done it. I only share things that I've actually done in person here, as well as I've done up in Cold Lake, Alberta, as well as I've done in Windsor, Ontario, and California and Vancouver, and it's worked every time. So, want more? That's a way to do it. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much, Audrey. I just want to see, does anyone have any other questions? Or, oh, there is one.
In your yard.
She just asked if it's possible to grow like muscat, like Labrador tea in your yard.
That's a hard one because it loves muskeg. You got some swamp?
Yeah.
Because the roots like anaerobic, they don't like a lot of oxygen, right? So it likes the peat. And so it's not going to do as well in a city yard, right? But now there's places that do supply. There's ones who are natural gatherers. So we can help out our forest gathering people by buying from them. And that's what it, like I said, we can't grow everything. But also, when you're out, Birds Hill, try not to pick all of it though, because Birds Hill has been getting hit pretty hard with a lot of people gathering plants without tending them and such. But the bog is the best place to find them. And usually if you see a black spruce is a good indicator of the of Labrador tea. Because there too, it's a boggy, it likes the boggy stuff. And my daughter just bought some property out in Lebow and it's got some swampy land. So I'm hoping I'll be going for a walk. I'll be taking a look, see if it's growing there, right?
I also have a swamp right by my house. Now I'm inspired. As I buy Labrador tea, it'd be nice to be able to harvest myself.
Yeah, because it's really good. It's really healthy, high in antioxidants. It's got a nice flavor to it. Just never boil it. Because if you boil it, it can release a toxin. Right? Always, none of our medicines never boil. Always just simmer. Just simmer, maximum 20 minutes for some. A lot of when I infuse it into oil, I just put in I get those little mini slow cookers, like for $3 at the thrift store. And then I just put my stuff in there and just keep it low and slow. It's the best way to do it. That way I can go for a nap, go for a nap, don't have to worry about it burning or anything else. And then I get up and I was like, oh, okay, we're ready. Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, Audrey. We are just so grateful.
And
And
right here, I got some of my comfrey. And then from rose hips, I saved the seeds and
wow.
I grind up the seeds and then put them into the slow cooker as well. Because the retinol A that's in the rosehip seeds helps with the skin. As my Auntie Katie said, she may have wrinkles, but they were soft wrinkles. So I'm hitting that stuff up. And all your acne medicine has retinol A, right? So why not? Sweetgrass, you can get that now in many places, even at the forks. You infuse oil with that, and it mosquitoes don't like it. And it smells nice. It smells like vanilla. So I got my natural perfume on. I put it on, and no mosquitoes. For ticks, they don't like cedar oil. So you just take cedar and infuse it into oil and put that on. And they say if you put it in a spritz thing and put it on your clothing, it can last for 6 weeks. Because now you can even buy cedar oil online. But, you know, it's good to know that these things actually do work. That's why Native people didn't have problem with mosquitoes and black fly and, you know, and all these critters, because these plants kept them away from it. When I smudge and I'm out even at the garden, people, oh, isn't that nice? You're blessing the plants. So no, I'm keeping the wasps away. I'm having a picnic and they can smell that meat. But having the smudge pots, they don't want to come around it because then that's fire. So reason for everything. So enjoy, have some fun with it, and experiment. And also look things up too, because there's many, many resources now. Because now we're allowed more to share our knowledge. Before we were banned from it. You know, so now we can share that. And now that I've shared with you, it's your responsibility to share with others. So please do. And yeah, come down sometime to Spirit Park and pick my brain. I usually bring something to munch on and such, because we feed others when we're there and such. So more than welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
Audrey.
you.